Have you ever noticed that the moments when you feel most alive are the ones where you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next? Think about it. Your first kiss, starting a new job, traveling to a foreign country where you don't speak the language. These moments terrify us. Yet, they're always when we feel most human, most present, and most real. What if I told you that this feeling of not knowing, this uncertainty that we spend our entire lives trying to escape, is actually the key to true freedom? Alan Watts, the British philosopher who brought Eastern wisdom to Western minds, spent decades exploring this paradox. He discovered something that goes against everything we've been taught about success, security, and the good life. Today, we're going to dive deep into what Watts called the art of not knowing, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at uncertainty the same way again. But first, let me ask you something. How much of your day is spent trying to control things that's completely outside of your control? Your thoughts drift to tomorrow's meeting, next month's bills, whether that person you texted will respond. We live in this constant state of mental chess, always trying to stay 3 moves ahead. But what if this entire approach to life is not just exhausting, but it's actually fundamentally flawed? Watts observed something fascinating about human nature. We have this incredible ability to suffer over things that haven't even happened yet, and probably never will. We create elaborate mental movies about possible futures, most of them disasters, and then we live as if these imaginary scenarios are real. We plan for contingencies that only exist in our minds. We worry about problems that are purely hypothetical, and in doing so, we miss the only thing that actually exists: the present moment. Now, you might be thinking, but surely planning's important. Well, of course it is. Watts wasn't advocating for reckless abandon or complete passivity. He was pointing to something much more subtle and profound: the difference between intelligent planning and neurotic control, the difference between being prepared and being paralyzed by the need for certainty. Think about a master surfer riding a massive wave. They prepare extensively. They understand the ocean. They know their equipment. But when they're actually on that wave, they're not thinking about technique or safety or what could go wrong. They're completely present, responding moment by moment to something that's fundamentally unpredictable. They've learned the art of not knowing while still being incredibly skilled and prepared. This is what Watts meant when he talked about the wisdom of insecurity. Our entire culture is built on the promise that if we just work hard enough, save enough money, find the right person, get the right job, then we'll finally feel secure. But Watts realized that this security is just an illusion. Life is inherently uncertain, and trying to eliminate that uncertainty is like trying to straighten a river. You might succeed temporarily, but eventually the water is going to find its natural course, and often with devastating consequences. Consider the ancient Chinese concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non action or effortless action. It's not about doing nothing, it's about acting in harmony with the natural flow of events, rather than against it. It's about responding rather than reacting. A skilled martial artist doesn't try to overpower their opponent through brute force. They use the opponent's energy and momentum, redirecting it rather than meeting it head on. This requires a deep trust in not knowing exactly what will happen next, but being ready to respond appropriately when it does. Watts noticed that we've somehow convinced ourselves that the thinking mind, with all of its planning and worrying and analyzing, is who we really are. But this is just one aspect of the human experience. There's also intuition, spontaneity, creativity, and love. These don't come from the planning mind. They emerge from something deeper, something that knows without knowing, that acts without overthinking. Have you ever had the experience of trying to remember someone's name, and the harder you try, the more elusive it becomes? But then, when you stop trying, when you're doing something completely unrelated, the name just appears. This is a perfect metaphor for how life works when we stop trying to force everything into predetermined categories. The art of not knowing isn't about being ignorant or unprepared. It's about recognizing that there's a vast difference between knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is information we collect and store. Knowing is alive, dynamic, and responsive to the present moment. You can have all the knowledge in the world about swimming, but until you jump in the water and feel it supporting you, you don't know how to swim. Watts often used a metaphor of life as music. If you're listening to a symphony, you don't spend the entire time anxious, waiting for the end. You don't wish the slow moments would hurry up so you can get to the exciting parts. You allow each moment of the music to be what it is, knowing that the beauty lies not in reaching the final note, but in the unfolding itself. Yet, most of us live life as if life were a problem to be solved rather than a dance to be danced. We approach our existence like we're filling out a form, trying to get all the right answers so we can finally feel relaxed. But what if there were no right answers? What if the question itself is flawed? This brings us to one of Watt's most profound insights about the nature of self. We think of ourselves as separate individuals, isolated units trying to navigate a hostile world. But this sense of separation is itself a kind of illusion. You're not separate from your environment any more than a wave is separate from the ocean. The wave is a temporary formation of the ocean, and you are a temporary formation of the entire universe. When you really understand this, the need for absolute control begins to dissolve. You realize you're not an isolated actor trying to manipulate the world from the outside. You're part of the intricate dance. And the beauty comes from learning to move with the rhythm rather than against it. But here's where it gets really interesting. The more you try to pin down who you are, the more elusive it becomes. It's like trying to look at your own eyes without a mirror. The observer and the observed are intimately connected. The self that's trying to know itself is itself part of what needs to be known. Now, I know that sounds kind of confusing, so replay that section if you need to. But it's a fundamental truth, and the more you can understand it, the more you'll be in line with what Alan Watts teaches us. And this is why Watts was so fascinated by the Zen tradition of not knowing. In Zen, there's a phrase, don't know mind, which points to a state of openness, of being present without needing to categorize or control the experience. It's not ignorance, it's a kind of intelligent innocence, like seeing the world with fresh eyes. Think about how children approach new experiences. They don't have elaborated theories about what should happen. They're curious, open, willing to be surprised. They haven't yet learned to be afraid of not knowing. Somewhere along the way, we convince ourselves that not knowing was dangerous, that we needed to have everything figured out to be safe. But what if the opposite's true? What if our obsessive need for certainty is actually what makes us unsafe, rigid, and unable to respond creatively to life's inevitable changes? A tree that's too rigid breaks in the storm, while the one that bends survives. Watts realized that freedom isn't something you achieve by gaining more control over your circumstances. Freedom comes from recognizing that you are life itself, expressing itself as you. You're not a separate being trying to control life from the outside. You are life, looking at itself through your eyes, thinking through your mind, feeling through your heart. This perspective completely transforms how we approach uncertainty. Instead of something to be feared and controlled, uncertainty becomes the space where creativity emerges, where life stays fresh and alive. The unknown isn't the opposite of the known, it's the field in which knowing happens. Consider how this applies to relationships. How much suffering comes from trying to control how other people feel about us, what they think, how they'll respond. We create these elaborate strategies to manage our image, to ensure we're liked or respected or loved. But genuine connection happens in moments of authentic uncertainty, when we reveal ourselves without knowing how we'll be received. The art of not knowing invites us to show up fully, without guarantees, to speak our truth without knowing if it will be welcomed, to love without knowing if it will be returned, to pursue our dreams without knowing if we'll succeed. This isn't recklessness, it's courage. It's the recognition that the alternative, trying to live in a bubble of false certainty, isn't really living at all. Watts understood that our discomfort with uncertainty runs so deep, but because we've forgotten something fundamental about the nature of existence. We think of ourselves as nouns, solid things that need to be protected and maintained, but we're actually verbs, processes, patterns of activity in life. When you watch a flame, you're not watching a thing, you're watching a process. The flame is the interaction between fuel, oxygen, and heat. It has no independent existence apart from these conditions. Similarly, what you call yourself is an ongoing process, a continuous conversation between your genes, your environment, your thoughts, your relationships, and your experiences. Understanding this dissolves many of our existential anxieties. You can't lose yourself because there was never a fixed self to lose. You can't fail at being yourself because yourself is whatever you're being right now. The pressure to maintain some imaginary perfect version of yourself evaporates when you realize that perfection lies not in achieving some ideal state, but in fully embracing whatever state you're actually in. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means engaging with life from a place of curiosity rather than anxiety, creativity rather than compulsion. When you're not spending all your energy trying to maintain an illusion of control, that energy becomes available for actually living, for responding intelligently and compassionately to whatever arises. The art of not knowing is ultimately about trust, not blind faith, but intelligent trust in the process of existence itself. You trusted this process to grow your body from a single cell, to beat your heart billions of times without your conscious intervention, to coordinate the unimaginably complex symphony of biological, chemical, and electrical processes that allow you to be aware right now. If existence is trustworthy enough to handle these incredibly complex processes without your conscious control, perhaps it's trustworthy enough to handle the unfolding of your life as well. This doesn't mean everything will always be pleasant or easy, but it means that whatever happens, you have the capacity to respond, to learn, to grow, to find meaning and beauty, even in difficult circumstances. So the next time you feel that familiar anxiety creeping in, that need to figure everything out, to plan for every contingency, remember that some of life's most beautiful moments emerge from the space of not knowing. Take a breath, relax your grip on the illusion of control, and allow yourself to be surprised by what wants to emerge. The art of not knowing isn't a technique or a philosophy you adopt. It's a recognition of how life actually works when we stop fighting it. It's available to you right now, in this moment, as you allow these words to land without needing to immediately categorize or judge them. Can you feel that spaciousness, that freedom that comes from not having to have it all figured out? That freedom is your birthright, and uncertainty isn't your enemy, it's the doorway through which freedom enters your life. This has been the Esoteric Archive, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. A like on the video would be greatly appreciated, and subscribe if you'd like more content like this. We're going to keep taking a look at philosophical concepts and things to help you take back control of your life, as well as anything else under the sun esoteric. I'm a new channel. I'm just figuring things out as I go. But leave a comment, if you guys want to discuss anything, I'd be glad to get back to you guys in the comments. Peace.